when the Bitcoin blockchain paper was published, this was 2009, that was the first time in history where you could transfer value on the rails of the internet, have the ledger updated in real time without any intermediaries. It's revolutionary about this technology. It is value transfer at its very core, whether that's transferring Bitcoin, stablecoins, the tokenization of real world assets, even money market funds. We're using stranded power. We don't want to go into a major metropolitan area and use expensive power because that power is high in demand. And we would see tokenization in the real estate sector and other real world assets on the business side. And so what I mean by that is in the structuring of these financial instruments that people syndicate in order to buy property. I think what's here and now and what people can use to learn to get up to speed on how the asset transfer mechanisms work in the digital asset world is to open a wallet and buy Bitcoin.
Welcome to the Executive Connect podcast. I'm Melissa Aarskaug, and today I'm excited to welcome Lee Bratcher, founder and president of Texas Blockchain Council. Welcome, Lee, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Melissa. Looking forward to the conversation.
I'm so excited to talk to you. You've built the Texas Blockchain Council into a powerhouse for blockchain advocacy. What inspired you to focus on making Texas a hub for blockchain and Bitcoin, and how has this vision evolved?
Yeah, several years ago, 2019, I saw a report from the Brookings Institute that said that Texas was reactionary and ill-equipped and unprepared in the realm of blockchain policy. And so there were other states that were leading the charge, that were winning business, that were winning entrepreneurs and capital allocators to move to those states. And I was disappointed that Texas hadn't taken a lead because Texas is a jurisdiction that prides itself in being pretty business friendly and also being at the forefront of innovation, right? And especially now with DFW earning the moniker Y'all Street, there's more finance professionals in Texas on a per capita basis than anywhere else in the world or anywhere else in the United States except for New York City. And I think the digital asset and crypto ecosystem is realizing that over the last couple of years and starting to make their home in places like Houston, Dallas, and Austin.
I love it. I'm so excited to talk about this today. Now, let's start with the basics and the essentials. For those that are new to blockchain, can you share a little bit about what it is and some foundational knowledge before we get started?
Sure. Yeah, it is at its core just a ledger. So double entry accounting, it's the way that we've tracked value transfer for centuries since the 1500s. Double entry accounting is a great system, but it doesn't work without a significant structure of intermediaries and databases and ledgers. And so when the Bitcoin blockchain paper was published, it's the first time in history. This was 2009. The white paper was published in 2008. The first Bitcoin transaction was 2009. That was the first time in history where you could transfer value on the rails of the internet, have the ledger updated in real time without any intermediaries. And the counterparties did not necessarily need to know each other or be in the same geographic area. And so that's really what's revolutionary about this technology. It is value transfer at its very core. So whether that's transferring Bitcoin, stablecoins, the tokenization of real world assets, even money market funds, right, are being tokenized by BlackRock and other large behemoths of the financial services industry. Pretty much all assets will run on the rails of blockchain, just like all information today runs on the rails of the internet, right? So 30 years ago, very little of the information that we had ran on the rails of the internet. It still was in encyclopedias and in the brains of very intelligent figures, thought leaders. But over the last several decades, pretty much all of that information has migrated to the internet and culminating now in this AI boom. where that information is being able to be aggregated and queried at an increasingly rapid pace. The same is happening with asset transfer. So anytime we're recording asset ownership, asset transfer, updating ledgers about who owns what, whether that's any asset really, from stocks to bonds to real estate, that will all one day happen on blockchain rails.
I'm curious, what are some of the misconceptions about blockchain that you've encountered, and how can we kind of reframe those concerns?
Yeah, I'll start with the terminology. It's pretty complicated because, when we use the term blockchain, it's a very broad, overarching term, similar to the term Web3. There's a lot of things that fall under it. Of course, the biggest bucket under blockchain is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the premier digital asset, is the first instance of blockchain technology. And there are other verticals of digital assets within the blockchain kind of digital asset umbrella. You also have other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Solana. Those are considered to be more of the programmable blockchain, like smart contract platforms where you can program business logic into the chains. You can also program business logic into Bitcoin, but it's less frequently used for that. Bitcoin is kind of the asset, the currency, the store of value, whereas Ethereum, Solana, and some of these other chains are serving different purposes. And then you've got other components within digital assets, like tokenization of real world assets. That could be the tokenization of dollars. That's stablecoins. Stablecoins did more transaction volume last year globally than the Visa credit card network. And we're just.
Are you a high-income professional looking for smarter ways to protect your wealth? The Texas Freedom Fund gives you the opportunity to invest in energy assets leveraging proven fracking technology and prime access to global markets. With strategic oil and gas investments, you can build real wealth while benefiting from tax advantages under laws dating back to the Reagan era. Take control of your financial future. Visit texasfreedomfund.executiveconnectpodcast.com.
Getting started. So I think Visa actually has a dashboard that tracks this. Visa and MasterCard are both getting involved in stablecoins because they realize that money should move at the speed of the internet, not at the speed of 3% transaction fees and T+2 transaction time and lack of finality. ACH transactions can be clawed back 90 days after the transaction has been made. So we're getting there, I think, in a lot of ways in the traditional finance world, but blockchain and digital assets is going to get us there a lot faster.
Yeah, that's unbelievable to hear with Visa and MasterCard, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen in Texas. Now, with your research on blockchain and land registries, how can businesses and individuals benefit long term?
Yeah, my PhD research was on the property rights, blockchain for land administration. My thesis was essentially the technology is there to do this, but the institutions and particularly like the land registry offices, the county clerk's offices, they have very, very little incentive to innovate. So I predicted that it would lag from a records land administration standpoint, because that is a function administered by governments. But that we would see tokenization in the real estate sector and other real world assets on the business side. And so what I mean by that is in the structuring of these financial instruments that people syndicate in order to buy properties, right? So take the typical structure, Melissa, that you guys are very familiar with, like the general partner, limited partner structure. That is where you can tokenize some of that limited partner ownership and even general partner ownership, doesn't matter. And those assets can trade with greater liquidity 24/7. Should they're right now, they're not 24/7 because you have to trade them on alternative trading systems, ATSs, which are regulated, securities exchanges for these kinds of assets. But I think in the future we'll see those trade like crypto trades 24/7. Now, there has to be an amalgamation of that. You have to have a marketplace with clear information, enough liquidity, enough buyers and sellers, and so you may not see like one individual building being tokenized and trading with that kind of liquidity in the near term. But I think all of that is coming, and it goes back to the original conversation that we had at the top of the call, which is we're transferring, we're democratizing asset ownership, and we're making it faster and cheaper for the asset owners to acquire more of the asset, sell the asset, and do whatever they want, exercise their property rights over the asset.
Ready to lead smarter and invest wiser? On the Executive Connect podcast, we unpack executive strategies for wealth and influence. Hit the subscribe button now. Don't just watch, act. Seems a lot easier, right, than historically in other areas. And so I love I've had a lot of these conversations recently with people that are learning about it, are, concerned about it, but they're watching from afar. So from someone that's looking to invest in or adopt blockchain, what is one kind of practical first step that they can take from your experience?
I think that the easiest way to get into it, there are real estate assets that are trading that are tokenized right now, and you can go find those. But that use case has got a few more years left in it before it's ubiquitous and before like all real estate deals are syndicated in that way. I think that's several more years away. I think what's here and now and what people can use to learn to get up to speed on how the asset transfer mechanisms work in the digital asset world is just to open a wallet and buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin, use stablecoins. Anytime you have to send money overseas or send money where you were going to have a $30 wire transfer fee, just use stablecoins and Bitcoin. I mean, stablecoins, you can send $1 million of stablecoins for just a few cents transaction fee, and it'll clear in moments, right? And then opening a Bitcoin, a wallet, and buying some Bitcoin, Ethereum, or some other digital asset, and playing around with that and understanding how the custody works. Understand the difference between self-custody and institutional custody. I think that's the best way to get into it right now.
I love it. Now, in Texas, shifting to a really hot topic right now is Bitcoin mining, and the regulatory environments are trending right now in Texas. With your focus in this area, what's your take on where we're headed from a regulatory standpoint?
Yeah, we've got some great things happening both at Texas and at the federal level. Obviously, federally, we expect to see market structure legislation and stablecoin legislation this year. I think it's not a foregone conclusion, but extremely likely is what I would say. In Texas, we are, in fact, just yesterday, Senate Bill 21, the Texas Strategic Reserve Bill, which is one that we've been working on for a long time, passed the Senate Business and Commerce Committee unanimously. It will be through the floor of the Senate soon and over to the Texas House. We expect over the next 45 days it will move through the House and pass, maybe not unanimously, but it will pass. And it's likely that the governor will sign that into law in the coming months. Of course, you also have Bitcoin mining in Texas. About 45% of all U.S. Bitcoin mining takes place in Texas. And there are a couple bills that we're watching closely, like Senate Bill 6, related to energy consumption, data centers, large loads like Bitcoin mining and AI data centers. And we do a lot of advocacy on the policy front. But I don't want to bore your audience too much with the nuances of grid policy and data center policy. But we're happy to dive into that offline.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is there anything that they should be aware of and for what's coming, or just let it flow as it comes out?
I think it's interesting for people to realize that the state of Texas is actually going to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. The comptroller's office is going to have Bitcoin, in a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Likely, this year. It's, this is exciting, and I think people, when they see that Texas is moving in this direction, of course, we have the Texas Stock Exchange that's opening up here in Dallas. The New York Stock Exchange just announced that it's moving all their Chicago sub-exchanges to Texas. Really, Texas is the place to be for financial services. And we're already a powerhouse in energy. We produce more energy than any other state, more energy than California by a long shot, even though they have about 30% more people than we do. And we're also going to be a leader in financial services and innovation too. I think innovators are pouring out of California and into Texas by the day. And so Austin is a little bit stronger than Dallas and Houston on that front. I think it's known as Silicon Hills versus Silicon Valley. So we're excited about all those developments.
It's so true. With South by Southwest coming up here, I'm excited to see how things shake out with that. There is a ton of buzz on YouTube about sustainable mining practices. I'm curious, from your perspective, how does Texas Blockchain Council promote eco-friendly solutions?
Sure. Yeah, mining does use a lot of energy, and depending on the day, on a nice, beautiful day like today, it would use about 5% of all power produced in the state of Texas, and other data centers are using, double that, probably about 10%. And that could be a scary number if someone doesn't understand the way in which the power is used, right? So the first thing that I'd say is we're using stranded power. We don't want to go into a major metropolitan area and use expensive power, because that means that power is high in demand. If power is expensive, it's in high demand, and if power is cheap, it's in low demand. So we go into the rural areas using excess wind and solar, excess power that was never going to make it to a population center anyways. There wasn't enough transmission capacity to get it there. I think what a lot of people don't know is a good bit of the power that we produce globally is actually unused and wasted. Just because you can't get that power to the point of use, there's not enough transmission, it's not the right time of day. You have to produce power and use it within the same, few seconds of time. And so that's just how the game goes. So we locate, the industry locates Bitcoin mining operations far from population centers using excess and stranded, typically renewable energy in West Texas. And another thing that we have worked on is a piece of legislation that clarifies that flared gas, so gas this is natural gas that's what's called associated gas that comes up out of the ground when you're drilling for oil. Typically, in order to not vent that gas in the environment, which is much worse for the atmosphere, they burn it, producing CO2, but that's way less than like the methane that was just venting. So they'll flare it. They call that flaring. So we actually authored some legislation that clarified that it is not a taxable event, not a severance taxable event, to redirect that flare stack from the flare to a generator for on-site production for a mobile data center, Bitcoin mining, AI, or otherwise. And so what that does is actually creates a 67% reduction in the carbon footprint of a flare that was previously just flaring that gas into the environment. So a couple of different ways where Bitcoin is really driving clean energy innovation, driving investments in renewables and nuclear power, and also reducing some flare gas.
That's great to hear. I know global interest in cryptocurrency. There's so much interest around the world to invest in cryptocurrency. I'm curious, how do you think Texas policies and legislation changes are going to affect the other states or other countries around the world?
Well, it is a concept called game theory that I think many of your listeners will be familiar with, that if there's no jurisdictions or sovereign entities that are giving an industry any time of day or any interest, then there is no game theory pressure for other jurisdictions or sovereigns to take interest. But the theory goes, or kind of the process or the logic goes, that as countries do start taking interest in passing things like strategic Bitcoin reserves and realizing that digital assets are the future of value transfer and the future of finance, they will start taking notice. And so the faster they start to pile in, the more pressure there is on the ones that have yet to pile in. And so right now we're kind of still in that early adoption phase, and we still probably have 20 more years to go before we get to the point where these assets are ubiquitous and used by all 8 billion people across the world. Right now, only about 500 million people globally have a wallet or transact in digital assets, stablecoins, crypto, or otherwise. So long ways to go, still early days.
That's interesting. That's not a lot, right? Given, I'm curious how that stacks up against other investments around the world, but 500,000 is not a lot. So get in
Oh, sorry,
early as they
500 million.
500 million.
Yeah,
Okay, there we go.
but still, that's only 1/16 of the global population. It's less than 10%.
Yeah, that's so get in early, I hear. Get
Yeah.
in before everybody's in. We like to ask our listeners, I know Bitcoin has been something that has been of interest to our listeners to submit questions about Bitcoin. So we have one. How do I start learning about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining? Do you have any recommendations on where to start?
Yeah, for Bitcoin and digital assets, I would go to one of the exchanges. They have really good quality educational content. Exchanges like River, um, uh, Coinbase, Kraken, Crypto.com, Blockchain.com. These are all great places that have really good content for folks to learn. And then on Bitcoin mining, they can go to our website. The Texas Blockchain Council does a lot of education about Bitcoin mining in particular. If they want to learn about sort of the, you know, uh, the academic side of it, like understanding how it interacts on the grid, why it's good for the grid, why it's good for the United States. If they actually want to mine Bitcoin, like they want to learn about them actually purchasing a Bitcoin mining machine, we don't do that. But one of our member companies does that for individuals. Their Compass Mining is the name of that company, and so if they want to actually purchase a mining machine, have it shipped to a warehouse data center where it will mine Bitcoin into their wallet, they can do that through companies like Compass.
I'm curious too now, how can listeners or people get involved or become a member of the Texas Blockchain Council? Is there a way that they could connect with you and your team?
Yeah, just at texasblockchaincouncil.org, we have a page on membership. It's probably not for everybody because it does have a cost to it. But for those that are in the industry or wanting to, network in the industry, looking for clients in the industry, we're typically well equipped to help there. If it's people who are really just wanting to learn more about it, I suggest they just go to like our YouTube channel, Y'all's YouTube channel. There's so much free content out there for people who are just wanting to learn. I wouldn't pay for anything that's just content. We give content away for free. Y'all give content away for free, and many other folks do as well. And there's a lot of great content out there. It does take about, some people say, 1,000 hours to really become, deeply versed in this industry. But I'd say, if somebody spent 15, 20 hours, reading and watching videos, they could get pretty up to speed. Some of the best book I think that's only like 75 pages is called Inventing Bitcoin by Jan Pritzker. There's another book called The Bitcoin Standard by Safety Amos. It gets a little bit more theoretical. Safety's an academic like myself. He's an economist, so it's a little bit more heady, but still a great read. And then there's similar ones for other assets. I think if you understand Bitcoin first, then you can more easily understand some of the other assets like Ethereum.
That's great. As we wrap up, I always like to look at the future. Your teaching experience and summit hosting, you clearly have a passion for education. How do you see blockchain evolving and in the future?
I think it will become like the internet, where we don't all know how the internet works, but we all use it every day. So when we educate people about it, we don't want to educate everyone about the entire ecosystem. It's impossible to learn. I think specialization is key. I mean, that's a principle that Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations uh, beautifully elucidated centuries ago, that we thrive as communities when we specialize. And to specialize in the digital assets ecosystem means to go narrow and to understand, if you're a finance person, or maybe you're an accountant, then you can specialize in the tracking, understand the software mechanisms and understand the reporting requirements and the FASB stuff. If you're in the energy industry, then of course you're going to go into data centers, Bitcoin mining, AI, GPU, high performance compute. If you're in real estate, you're probably going to want to learn about the tokenization of real estate. So there's all these different angles, and I wouldn't suggest anyone try to learn the whole industry. Just like no one's going to learn everything about the internet, right? Like you're not going to learn everything related to TCP/IP protocols, or the email, how email works and different packets are sent over the internet. You're going to learn how the internet impacts your industry and your business. And so that's what I would suggest to folks, is just find that niche and make sure that niche is adjacent to where you already are from a business perspective.
Yeah, that makes me think, with your research, your PhD research on blockchain land registries, yeah, I'm curious from my perspective how this technology might change property rights in the next 5 years. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think it gets people closer to property ownership. It makes them better able to utilize assets that they own to provide more value to them and their families, right? So what do I mean by that? I mean, so let's take a pretty simple example, like money market funds. Imagine if you could take, your money market fund that's earning like a kind of a treasury, like a T-bill rate of return, and use that as collateral and get some tokens with it, some stablecoin tokens or money market tokens that are redeemable for that money market fund or a stablecoin, or back to the US dollar in kind of in the original sense. And you collateralize that, and you use that to invest in real estate. Or if you're able to kind of exercise your property rights over your rental houses that you own, or over an asset, maybe you own multiple cars, and like there's a decentralized Turo that comes up where you're able to exercise your property rights and ownership over those cars by renting them out in a decentralized way where Turo is not taking a cut. There's any number of things. Think of any asset that you own. How do you put it to productive use? And there's probably a more efficient way to do that with in the digital asset realm, because what you're doing is you're increasing speed, you're cutting out middlemen, you're cutting out fees, and that means that you're accruing more value to the asset owner.
Yeah, that's great. I know, I've got all these questions I'm curious to ask you. I'm curious, just looking back on your journey from professor to blockchain advocate, what is one message that you hope that carries forward in this industry?
I think right now it's important to let people know that speculation is really not what this industry exists for, although there is a lot of that going on right now. So I would caution people against the meme coin frenzy. I would make sure to use reputable partners. Do not get scammed. I mean, it can happen to anyone, so be very vigilant. Not even with necessarily with crypto, just in general. Anytime you're dealing with financial services, you want to use reputable service providers and connect with reputable actors. And so I would just make sure people, you got to understand the asset, right? You want to understand what a wallet is and how to send a transaction. And even professionals get, Bybit was hacked for $1.5 billion just days ago. So even professionals can fall victim to some of this stuff. So education is the watchword of the day, and using reputable service providers. And um, if you want to play the lottery, you can buy meme coins. That's fine, but it is like penny stocks. It is very similar. So meme coins behave like penny stocks, and they behave like slot machines.
And that's really good advice, paying attention to some of these scams or these emails or click here for this or some of the, bait that we have, and be smart. I think that's really good advice. Be smart and wise and pay attention to it, because it is your currency, it is your money, and it can, just be lost the same as any other investment. I want to get in kind of closing. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share with our listeners about the things we may or may not have covered today during our time?
The last thought I have is said we'd love to connect with your listeners in person. We have the North American Blockchain Summit that we host every year in the fall. It will be at the Bush Presidential Center in Dallas, Texas, next to SMU. Beautiful venue, very high class. And it's not going to be 50,000 people. It's not like, a huge conference. We typically have anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people. And but they're business professionals. They're people that are on the kind of that institutional side of things. And it's a good place for folks to safely come and network with traditional finance people who are interested in blockchain, digital assets, and also crypto folks who are native to the industry, but are a little bit less crypto bro-esque in their, the way they carry themselves.
That's great. What an insightful conversation. Thank you so much. You're a busy, busy man. I know you have a lot of places to be. We've covered so much about blockchain, the future, education. Lee, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and time. Where can listeners connect best with you?
Sure. I mean, our website is one. We listed that earlier. I'm also on Twitter at Lee_Bratcher.
Thank you so much for sharing that. To our listeners, stay challenged. Make sure you like and connect with us. And until next time, that's the Executive Connect podcast.